Fear is nothing more than a signal. But most people don't look at the fear and don't pay enough attention to how they feel. Feeling is conscious awareness of the vibration. 100 trillion of my cells are vibrating at my body. It's just a signal. Now, can we be better at recognizing the signal? Can we become better at recognizing patterns? Can we become better at being deliberate about what we want to do versus reacting?
Hello and welcome to the Perpetual Traffic Podcast. This is your host, Ralph Burns. And this is a show where we share cutting-edge strategies in acquiring leads and sales for your business through paid traffic, but not just traffic itself. Last couple of shows, we were coming to you from Traffic and Conversion Summit. So it's not all about traffic, is it? Qasim Aslam, my awesome co-host, who I finally met for the first time just weeks ago. And now we're back being virtual again. How the hell are you?
I'm living the dream. We're back to being e-buddies.
That's right. It's much more fun when we're sitting in the Scooby-Doo van and just talking away about our hangovers. But today we're going to be talking about some stuff that's actually even more important, in my opinion, than traffic and or conversion. It is how you think about business and your mindset. And I always sort of talk about this, and our guest here is going to be somewhat flattered in the fact that we have mentioned one of the original places where I sort of became aware of who he is as a human and as somebody who is put on this earth for the betterment of mankind, from the movie The Secret, which is the audiobook I think I listened to. My wife still jokes with me about it. I think I actually listened to it like 1,000 times. After I was fired the second time, started this whole thing, and that was 10 years ago. Took it with me everywhere. We are really excited to have a really special guest on here for you today on Perpetual Traffic, none other than John Assaraf. John, welcome to Perpetual Traffic. Psyched to have you on board.
Gentlemen, it's great to be on and great to connect with the two of you again.
Yeah, I mean, today we're going to be talking about a lot of the stuff that you've done. You've got a pretty thick resume. You've written a few books, done a few things, built 5 multi-million-dollar companies. You're a 2-time best-selling author of Having It All in the Answer. Of course, you were featured in The Secret. You've also appeared on Larry King Live, Anderson Cooper, Ellen DeGeneres. I mean, now you can put in the bio Perpetual Traffic. Like, let's just bump Larry King aside and put us right, first seed. We're pretty excited because you're not only a guy who thinks high level and is strategic, but as we were talking in the pre-record, which is what we do here at Perpetual Traffic before we hit record, you actually know a lot of your metrics and your numbers and your conversion metrics and how many leads you're getting and all that kind of stuff. Like, who knows that stuff? Like, when you're thinking big like you are. So you're this rare sort of combination of these two different skills. And I think that brings a lot to the table here as we talk high level as well as tactical. Your business itself, like it seems like it hasn't skipped a beat. We've been obviously watching and following you for years and years now, but things are going pretty darn well. Even in spite of all this iOS tracking stuff, you still have the metrics that you're tracking every single day. You're spending a lot on paid media, running, I would imagine, multiple millions of paid traffic with 500,000 to 750,000 leads that you're generating. How are you guys doing it all? Like, how has your business been performing the last 6 months or so since all this stuff sort of hit the digital marketing world?
So our business actually got better. We actually increased our reach, increased our impact, increased our revenues and our leads in the last 18 months. And yes, there were changes, totally agree. But that actually works to our advantage because of one, I think, key psychological factor. And that is my team and I are what I call our adaptationists. And we like to deal with challenges head on and get ahead of them. So if you know there's a storm coming, you prepare, right? If you know that there's some risk, then you look to discover what can I do to mitigate the risk. And that's what we did with the iOS change. We knew it was coming. We talked to several people in our mastermind. We asked ourselves, how do we pivot? How do we adapt quickly to a worst case scenario? So we doubled down, for example, on our content strategy. We doubled down on our affiliate strategy. We doubled down on the free events that we did as we tried to figure out what will our ad costs be this week, next week, the week after that, because we knew that would be affected. So we said, okay, let's pivot a little bit and say, let's buffer our risk by creating a few tactical moves and maneuvers that would buffer those things. And that's what we did. We took care of all the requirements for the new iOS changes, which you pretty much had to. And then we started to navigate and started to see, what can we do with our ads? We instead of decreasing our testing, we increased our testing. And as I think I mentioned to you when we were talking a little bit before, my lead cost as of this morning, all right, it was about 3 weeks ago. It was about, and I'm going to give you Google and I'll give you Facebook. It was about $12 per lead on Facebook. This past week, it's been around $6, 50% less. One tactical change. I'll tell you why in just a little bit, with the risk of it might increase our cost. But and then with Google, we've decreased our lead cost by about 30% by recalibrating some of our videos and what we do right at the beginning of each of our videos, and recalibrating some of our thumbnails and things like that. So we're consistently engaged in discussions with friends of ours, people that we mastermind with, sharing best practices. And when a lot of people are scaling back, that's when I actually like to put the pedal to the metal to figure out what's going to work faster so I can recover and recalibrate faster.
Not many people did that. A lot of people just scale back. I mean, it sounds great in theory, but you have to have the data and the analytics and the team to be able to sort of which way to pivot. You said
Correct.
You did some other things before we get into the open loop of the 50% or the 30% reduction, but like you did some other things, more content up front. It sounds like, was it a fundamental strategic shift as opposed to just maybe some tactical stuff? Or was it just a mindset shift alongside of, like, give us that in a little bit more detail.
So in the world that I play in, right, which is the personal development side, specializing in behavioral neuroscience and why people do what they do, why don't they know the things they should do, how do we help people overcome fears? So I'll give you an example. COVID, okay, which everybody's who's alive in the world is pretty much aware of, created a lot of fear and uncertainty with people, right? And so we just became an advocate for understanding, how do you manage fear better? How do you manage uncertainty better? How do you manage stress better? And we gave away so much free content on dealing with how to navigate through what you're navigating through right now. So we took a real world example, inserted our methodologies around, winning the game of fear or stress or anxiety or uncertainty. And we just gave people an enormous amount of, here's what's going on. Here's why it's happening. Here's how you can become victorious over it. Here's how you can adapt. Here are some techniques for you to use to manage your mindset better. And then we said, oh, by the way, if you want to change your brain so you can change your income, you can go deeper in with our work over here. So we just gave away a lot of free stuff that people needed and wanted. And we just built a phenomenal following of people that liked us, trusted us, that wanted to listen to us, and then see what else we had. And so our business during this entire, we grew last year. We are growing again this year. And so instead of thinking about, what can I get for me right now because of my uncertainty, my stress, and my fear, what can I give other people that are going through the exact same thing to help them?
Aside from all the COVID commercials that everyone's now sick of, in times like these, right? We didn't go down that road, but how did you address it? Like, things suck right now, and you're really scared about like whether or not you're going to live, or whether your grandma or your mother, and we've all have personal cases of this. Like that fear is real. Like, how do you get that across to people in a way that doesn't sound hackneyed, cliched, or like all the big brands do, just tired? Like, how do you get to people where they really live?
Real conversations. I mean, just real freaking conversations. So it's like, hey, I was talking to my son last night, and he was sharing with me that they're thinking of closing down their offices because of COVID. Hey, one of my clients was experiencing this yesterday, and I know that it may sound reasonable or unreasonable to you, or I read this article that I know is blatantly not true, not because I'm an expert, because the people that I ask for help are experts. So I entered the dialogues around what I was experiencing, my clients were experiencing, or what was happening in the media of how do you know who to trust, me included, right? Like, how do you know who to trust, me included? So it's just like there's, you can teach people how to learn, but then you can teach people to learn, the art of learning. And so I was entering the dialogue that was already happening in their brains, which is, neuromarketing and neurosales 101. So if I can meet them where they're at and have a dialogue with them and give them an opportunity to ask questions, maybe bring on other people that can help them navigate through the challenges that they were facing. Now, at the beginning of COVID, it was kind of like, well, this is just another flu. We didn't know, what the severity was, what the virality of it was, what the death rate per 100,000 or million was going to be. So there was just a lot of uncertainty, and so I entered into that uncertainty. I wrote some blogs around it. I did some videos on it. I did an enormous amount of Q&As around it, and didn't ask for like, I didn't, let's say, talk about COVID and every time say, oh, by the way, we have this event. Nope. It was like, let's be in the dialogue and let's stay in the dialogue to build the trust and rapport, which is one of the ways that you can help, navigate people to something else. You have to build the trust and rapport first. And if you build the trust and rapport first, then you can get to the next level of direction of what is it that might make more sense for you. So we looked at how could we help people using the neuroscience and neuropsychology principles that we teach all of our clients. How can we use those to help them navigate what they're thinking and feeling and experiencing themselves? So that's what we did a lot of, like for months and months and months. I did more like Instagram lives and Facebook lives, and then got on a variety of podcasts and interviews live on other people's platforms, just to give people the frames to eliminate or alleviate some of the discomfort that they were feeling.
And obviously, I mean, we're coming out of that to a certain degree. I mean, I still think there's a fair amount of fear that's in the market,
There
but I mean,
is.
now people are sort of realizing, all right, well, this is a new phase. This is a new reality. This is what I'm going to
Yeah.
have to face from here on out, whether or not, the vaccinations are going to continue to come and booster shots are going to work, and, death rates stay relatively low as they have been. But like, then it's back to business. It's
Sure.
not just, all right, now I have to overcome this. So, and you're dealing with a lot of different businesses, and Cosmo and myself are in the same position where, fear is a very real thing as you grow that business, no matter whatever phase that you're in, whether it's, a 6-figure business getting to a 7-figure to an 8-figure, all the way up to, multiple 9-figure billion-dollar companies, that sort of thing. So fear is all the way across the spectrum, and it's just something that it sounds like your organization obviously deals with head on. It's
Oh yeah.
obviously what Brainathon is all about in a lot of your teachings. So tell us about like the business owners, because I mean that's something that I think the perpetual traffic listener is definitely is concerned about. They probably don't realize it, but they get to a point where they're growing, and then they just kind of hit the wall. Like, and everyone sort of hits the wall at different points. I always sort of think every time you 3x your business, everything breaks, and then you don't know what to do, and you need help, or you need a new team, or you need to restructure. Tell us about some of the challenges that you're facing with some of your business customers, and sort of where they're at in that continuum and that journey, and how they deal with fear to ultimately achieve business success.
Sure, Ralph. So let me ask you a question just to set the frame for this. Were you or I or anybody who's listening or Kasim born with any fear?
I think it's, well, the lower brain is there constantly, but
Were
no,
you
I didn't
born
grow up with
fear
my
of
fear
failing?
of spiders. But
Yeah, were you
right,
born with fear of
no,
snakes, of spiders, of failing, of succeeding and failing, of
right.
making the wrong hiring
It's a
choice, of
learned
losing
behavior,
money, of
100%.
buying something
Yep.
and not using it? Were you born with the fear of being embarrassed, ashamed, ridiculed, judged, rejected? Were you born with any of those fears? Because there's 50 main fears that are the core fears, shall we say. I just gave you like 8 of them. And my question that I always start with, whether it's an entrepreneur or a ballet dancer, it doesn't make a difference. Were you born with any fear? And the answer is 0. We have an automatic reaction to loud noises, but we're not afraid of heights, snakes, or losing money, or getting into a car crash, or flying, or getting on the train. 0 fears. So the question becomes, the next question is, does everybody suffer from a fear of failure? Does everybody suffer from a fear of being embarrassed, ashamed, ridiculed, or judged? Does everybody suffer from being afraid of snakes or spiders? And the answer is no. So the question is, what is fear? Right? What is fear? And the answer from a pure neuromechanics perspective is whenever there is a situation, let's say a situation, whether I need to make a purchase decision, the marketplace changes, all right? And my brain projects any type of pain or discomfort in the present moment or in the future. My brain projects. Now, the question is, where is it projecting it from? And the answer is from my memory bank. So I have neural patterns or memories. And whenever this thing, this situation comes up, my brain automatically projects into the future a potential negative or painful, uncomfortable result or circumstance. Does that make sense fundamentally? So we know that the same meaning is not had by everybody of what it means. So there are some people, when the market, for example, the stock market crashes, they have got dopamine being released in their brain because they're so freaking excited that they finally have an amazing opportunity to make millions or billions, while the majority of people are running for the hills. When COVID happens and people don't have the skill of how to think, the skill of what should I do when there's so much uncertainty, they are in a fight, flight, or freeze modality, which is what happens when the fear circuit is activated. But why doesn't a firefighter who's going into a burning or blowing building, a building that's blowing up, enter into fight, flight, or freeze, and they actually are calm and responding to the fire, or a Navy SEAL or an astronaut? And the answer is because they've been there before and they're trained. So the very thing that may cause you fear because of COVID may cause me to go, holy shit, here we go. All right, let's rock and roll, because I've seen this pattern before. This is a pattern of unimaginable possibilities if you know how to navigate through it. So when we're dealing with entrepreneurs specifically, I'm going to come back to your question. We always behave at the highest level of our training under stress. Let me repeat. We always revert or behave at the highest level of our training under stress. So if you've never seen this pattern, if you've never navigated through this situation before, if you're not in the environment of the people who can guide you and show you what to do, how to do it, when to do it, right? Then you're going to fight, you're going to freeze, or you're going to run away. Not because there isn't opportunity here, is because you don't know how to navigate to the opportunity. So you're going to run away from what you think might happen. And there's a part of our brain called the right prefrontal cortex, or what I call is the Frankenstein part of the brain, that's always on high alert saying, what if negative? What if, give me a negative statement or situation or circumstance or result. So we have these neuro parts of our brain, the Einstein part of our brain, which you see my Einstein back there, right? And then you see my Frankenstein's monster up there. That is the left prefrontal cortex and right prefrontal cortex battle that goes on. And most people don't know how to deactivate that Frankenstein's monster that's always thinking about the worst case scenario. And they live there, they feel that, and they behave in ways that keeps them stuck, and in many cases causes them to fail and focus on exactly what they don't want, because they don't know how to activate that genius part of their brain that can actually help them navigate through the tumultuous, crazy, uncertain, doubtful, fearful situations, because they don't have the skill to navigate through that. And so when we're dealing with...
Navigate through it. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I mean, to navigate through it, is it just a matter of practicing your brain to overcome it? So, for example, a stupid example here, but when I was a kid, I was deathly afraid of the dark. So I locked myself in our attic for like 45 minutes. And now I'm no longer fearful of the dark. I don't know why I was fearful of the dark. I think my brother, my idiot brother, used to like throw me in the toy box, pull all the toys out, and then throw me in there. Still kind of claustrophobic. But anyway, the point is like it was a learned fear. But then the only way that I got around, I still can't believe I actually did this. I was like 17 years old, but I did it because I was like, screw it, I'm just going to try and do it. And it's like, it did work. And so is that in essence what we're talking about? Do you have to just sort of train yourself like the firefighter running into the burning building? He is trained, so he's done it many times, whereas us as normal humans would probably not run into that burning building. Is it just that easy?
It's
or is that simple, I guess, is my question.
It can be that easy, right? So you happen to choose the fight it modality, and you said the hell with it, I'm not going to be overrun and overcome by this. I'm going to challenge myself. Now, was it the dark that you were afraid of, or was it what you were told about the dark and what might happen there that you were afraid of?
Wow,
it's kind of like the boogeyman's in the dark, and the boogeyman's going to come and get you, and the boogeyman's going to hurt you. Right?
What my
so there's a couple of different things
to me,
right?
But anyway, just answer.
Yeah. whenever we have, a fear, whether it's real or imagined, right? Our brain responds the same way, it releases the neurochemicals of cortisol, epinephrine, norepinephrine. And we know that an emotion, fear is an emotion triggered in the subconscious mind, releases the neurochemicals that we feel in our body. Now we are consciously aware that we're afraid. Well, we can also, instead of like fighting it, one inner size, I call it, that actually deactivates that part of our brain in less than 90 seconds is called Take 6, Calm the Circuits. So we know that when that fear circuit is activated, if we just took 6 slow breaths into our nose and out through our mouth as if we're breathing out through a straw, we'll actually deactivate the fear circuit in less than 90 seconds. So that's part one. Part two, and this is really just understanding how to use your brain better. Martial artists use it. Astronauts use it. Firefighters use it. Police officers learn this. There's another inner size that I call is Take 6. It's called AYA, Awareness, Intention, Action. So in a calm state where we can respond versus a stress state where we are reacting, we can now be aware of what have our thoughts, what are the thoughts, feelings, emotions, sensations, and the behaviors that we've been engaging in for, let's say, the last 5 minutes or 50 minutes. And then we say, well, what's our intention? Well, my intention is to be calm. My intention is not to be afraid of the dark. My intention is to master my mindset and my emotions. And so that's my intention. I go, what's one action step I can take? I can calmly enter into a dark room for 5 minutes and just be in a calm, relaxed state. Now I'm deliberately and consciously recalibrating my nervous system and my own biology. And so when we are dealing with, the neuromechanics of fear, fear is triggered based on our subconscious patterns and memories. And some of the things that trigger us, okay, will cause us to be motivated, and others will cause us to want to run away or procrastinate or self-sabotage. Now we're dealing with the world of what level of the game do you want to play? Do you want to be a victim of your conditioning from the past? Or do you want to become victorious over it? Do you want to play the game of mental and emotional control at the kindergarten level or at the pro level? Right? So now what we're learning and what we understand that we can do is we can have much more control. And when we have more awareness and we add some skill to the awareness, now we can say, okay, let me keep activating my Einstein brain, the left prefrontal cortex part of our brain, where I could be a better conductor. I could be a better executive director of my focus, my attention, my energy, and my behaviors. So this is where conscious control starts to come in. And with practice, and if we practice the right things, we have unconscious competence. Right? So practice is what makes permanent patterns. And so I could practice a pattern through visualization because visualization is simulation. So if I, for example, was working with you when you were a kid, I would say, Ralph, before you go to make the leap to go into that room for 45 minutes, I want you to close your eyes and see yourself in the room for 1 or 2 or 3 minutes. I'm going to reduce the neural tension for you to 1 to 3 minutes and show you that in your mind, you could be in the room and the room could be in your mind and you can control yourself. And I would have you breathing very, very slowly in and out so that you are controlling your emotional and mental state deliberately. Then I might put you in the room. I'd probably have you practice that 10 times, 20 times, 30 times. So I would create a neural pattern, an emotional state that you are deliberately controlling. Then I would put you in the room for 1 or 2 or 3 minutes and have you control that. So you could ease into it. You can use language patterns. You can use visualization patterns. You can use mental contrasting patterns. Because if we can create the pattern in our brain and we are deliberately creating it and controlling it and reinforcing it, now we are in control. What happens with fear is our brain is projecting the worst possible outcome as a protective mechanism, which may or may not be true. Right? But we're projecting all the time. Our brain is predicting to conserve energy up to half a second before you even are aware of it. And so when you learn to be aware, now you could be deliberate about choice. When you're not aware, you are a victim of old conditioning and programming. And so I don't know if that's too much information. But when I work with entrepreneurs, most people are behaving at the highest level that they have been trained at, which is an unconscious pattern. And so when something like COVID happens, when something like an iOS change happens, most people don't have the skill set of what to do, so they default to fear.
Well, it's the easy thing to fall back on.
Well,
You're letting your animal brain sort of take control, right?
That's right. It's just a protective mechanism. There's nothing. Listen, if you're driving your car and a light pops up on your dash, have you ever considered taking a hammer and hitting it? Well, of course not. The light's just a signal. Maybe you're low on air in the back left tire. Maybe your windshield wiper fluid's low. Maybe you're going to run out of gas in 50 miles. It's just a signal. Fear is nothing more than a signal. But most people don't look at the fear and don't pay enough attention to how they feel. Feeling is conscious awareness of the vibration 100 trillion of my cells are vibrating at, called my body.
And they
And most
overreact to
people,
that. It's just a signal.
it's just a signal. Now, can we be better at recognizing the signal? Can we become better at recognizing patterns? Can we become better at being deliberate about what we want to do versus reactive?
I once read that 90% of high performing individuals do some form of either conscious or unconscious, either meditation or visualization,
Yeah,
which,
I
like,
do it every day.
visualization and meditation for me has just been transformative. And it's not the thing we talk about here on the show, because, or like when people say, like, oh, how did you become successful? Well, I started here and then I did this and I did that. But 90% of it was because I felt like I actually could, or I faked myself into thinking that I could,
Yeah.
fake it till you make it, but it absolutely is true. So, like, for entrepreneurs and for people who are, trying to get to that next level, they just take us through some of those tactics as well. I mean, not necessarily the overcoming the fear, but some people just can't physically visualize themselves, running a successful company, or, having 100 employees, or speaking on TNC stage, or whatever it happens to be. But if you visualize it in advance, like pretty much everything I visualized way back when has come true. And then you just have to visualize again, like whatever your goals are. So the point is, like, for every high performing entrepreneur, I think Jack Canfield says it, like everybody in The Secret says it. Obviously, you're a big component of it. Like, what can you tell them that is not the tactical and strategic perpetual traffic stuff, but the things that will actually help you and allow you to be more successful as a business person?
So let me give you a scenario that I think will make sense to everybody. Imagine you're sitting your favorite restaurant or a bar or coffee shop. It doesn't matter. You're with a friend, and over to your left or to your right, you notice somebody that is from Hollywood, and it may be an actor or an actress or a producer that you're familiar with, and you have a lot of respect for that person. They turn around and they look at you and they kind of wave, and you see that they're holding, like a little manual in their hand. And they get up and they walk over to you and they go, "Hi, my name is Steven Spielberg, Ron Howard, whatever is the name that you recognize." They go, "Listen, I'm reading this script right now, and there's a part in this script. When I looked at you, I thought you could be that role. The description is you. Let me ask you a question. If I was to have you look at the script and agree to train you on how to act just like a 5 or 6 minute piece and pay you $1 million, would you be able to take a look at the script and like learn the script? I'll give you some amazing coaching. And let's say you said, "Yeah, my God, I want to be in a movie." And you've never seen the script. You just have respect for the person who shared this, that you might be good at playing this role. What would you do if you signed on the dotted line, said, "Yep, I'll learn the script"? You've never seen it before. What would you do the first day you got that script? What would you do? I imagine if filming was 6 months from
Go to
now,
the end.
you'd probably read it once or twice, right? Or maybe 100 times.
Sure.
I imagine you might close your eyes and you might pretend in your mind what it's going to be like, to be on camera, to be on the stage, to be with one or two of your Hollywood, or the Hollywood celebrities that you like. You might practice until you rehearsed enough to memorize the script, right? Now, the very act of reading it, doing it, practicing it, researching it, practicing it some more, filming yourself, recording yourself over and over and over and over and over again is nothing more than you creating and reinforcing neural patterns in your brain. Would you agree with that?
For sure.
Well, any pattern that we repeat over and over and over again, our brain likes to make those patterns soft wired or more permanent. And it goes from conscious effort to unconscious patterns. So why review? Like, this is my exceptional life blueprint. And this has got images, pictures of my current life and some of the life that I want to create. It's got every part of my life in the script for health, wealth, relationships, career, business, finances, charity, net worth, income, everything in a script that's taken me 40 years to perfect. And you know what I do every day? I review my script. I review the vision, the goals. I visualize it. I emotionalize it. I read it. I run my fingers across it. I listen to it. Why? Because I am creating patterns in advance of needing them so that my unconscious or subconscious mind, all right, moves me towards them versus being afraid of them. And our brain has financial set points. Our brain has weight set points, relationship set points, business set points, lead set points, conversion set points that we have gotten used to expecting and achieving. And anytime we deviate from what is normal and comfortable for us, triggers in our brain activate and we procrastinate and self sabotage to keep us in our comfort zone. It's the brain's way of keeping us safe. We can be miserable and safe. It's our brain's way of conserving energy. It's our brain's way, all right, of making sure that we do just what we need to do based on the conditioning that we have had over 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. And that's why businesses hit plateaus. That's why people hit income plateaus, businesses hit plateaus, not because the knowledge and the skill isn't there or available, is that they hit mental or emotional or strategical or financial plateaus that is their own brain's setting. No differently than the room that you are in right now is at a certain temperature. If cold air came in, your heater would go on to calibrate the temperature. If hot air came in, your air conditioner would go on. That's a cybernetic mechanism. It's exactly how our brain works as well around our business plateaus and levels. And so our job, and I always have these Rubik's cubes on my desk. Let's say the 2x2 is a $500,000 a year business. Just need to learn the algorithm, right? 3x3 $1 million a year business. Just learn the algorithm. It's already there. Oh, you want a bigger business, 5 million? That's your 4x4 algorithm. Oh, you want the 10 million? Oh, that's your 5x5. Oh, you want your $1 billion business? Well, that's just a little bit more complex. So what we have to understand is in order for us to get out of our own way is, yes, we have to have the right mindset, plus we have to have the right skill set, plus we have to have the right action set in an environment that fosters our growth and fosters us taking action, moving towards our goals versus moving away from staying in our comfort zone. And the challenge we have is most people would prefer to master disappointment instead of mastering the science and art of change.
True.
Get you guys thinking
People
a
are
little
afraid
bit
of
on this
change.
podcast today.
Well, I think on the planning your life ahead of time, like there's a element to goal setting, meditation, visualization. I think when I try and explain it to people, I say, well, there's once a time I watched The Departed, which is a movie about like Boston gangsters. I watched it all the way through, and then I saw it about a year later, and I didn't really exactly remember this whole story, but I caught it midway through. And the first time I watched it, I was on the edge of my seat. Everything was like, oh my God. I was, you had that sort of nervous fear, don't know what's happening next, kind of an unpredictable plot. But then how I sort of describe visualization and goals and everything else is like the second time I watched The Departed halfway through, I didn't watch it with that same level of fear. I wasn't on the edge of my seat. I wasn't anxious. I wasn't nervous because I knew who got killed at the end. I don't actually remember who gets killed at the end now, but
It
the
was
point was I
familiar
knew
to
the
you.
end of the story.
It
So I
was
was like,
familiar.
visualization and goals are like that same thing. And it like if you can actually see yourself in the position where you ultimately want to be, depending on how many years, a year, 3 years seems to be sort of a good sort of intermediate time, at least for me, at least, through the people that I've learned this strategy from. It's like you've already seen it happen. So things happen in your life and you're attracted to things and repel the other things are you repel because you're still guiding yourself to this end point. And it's amazing what can actually happen because you're doing it naturally and without fear, and the right things are being attracted to you. Not to get into law of attraction, but I mean, that's really kind of how I visualize it. Like that, when I explain that to people, like, oh, I kind of get that. If they're not a goal setter, if they're not a visualizer, if they're not somebody who does meditation or does, vision maps and all the stuff that you teach, but it's just a basic core concept that people just sort of let their emotions run wild and their fears, and they feel like they're powerless to change it when in fact they actually are, if they just took a little bit of time, 15, 20 minutes a day or whatever it happens to be, to sort of reprogram this huge muscle that's in our heads here. And it's the most powerful computer, ever created.
Yeah, I call our brain, your $100 billion biocomputer that you're just not a very good operator of.
Nobody
And
gave you
so,
an instruction manual.
well, that's right. I mean, that's why I wrote my latest book, Inner Size. You mentioned a couple of things I just want to piggyback on. You mentioned the art of goal setting, and that's really really critical, right? When you understand that there are certain components that you need to put in place in order for your brain to actually work in harmony and coherence and flow. It makes it a little bit easier, but there's also the other side of it, right? There's the goal achieving process that also has to be added to the goal setting process, right? So, in addition to setting goals, which anybody could do, if you have your big vision, your goals, your timelines of when you want to achieve those goals, and you even have your why you must achieve your goals, vision, goals, and why are a really good start. But there's another part to the goal achieving process that very few people talk about. And so I'll ask you a question is, let's say you have a vision, goals, and a big why. Why do people still not achieve their goals? And the answer is, for some people, they have limiting beliefs. So if they don't have the right beliefs to take action around their big goals and why, they'll sabotage or procrastinate. If their vision and goals and big why is bigger than their current self-image, there's a part of our brain that sees ourselves of here's what I'm worth, here's what I'm capable of achieving, here's what I deserve to achieve. If that part of our brain isn't recalibrated for the vision and goals and why that we have, we will not take inspired action. So we have limiting beliefs, we have self-image disconnects. Number 3, let's say we have fears of being embarrassed, ashamed, ridiculed, judged, failing, being disappointed, disappointing our family. If we do our best and we don't achieve it. If we have fears that we don't know how to manage, fear is an emotion that either it manages us or we manage it. In the absence of knowing how to have emotional control, we're at the mercy, of our emotions versus using those to help us navigate towards our goals and using fear as fuel. So we have 3 things that can hold us back. And then there's the 4th one. I have vision, goals, and a big why. But let's say I don't have currently the knowledge or the skills of how to achieve it. Then I activate my doubt and uncertainty center in my brain, which is connected to my motivational cortex, which is directly linked to my behavioral cortex in the brain. So let's start thinking about our brain almost like we would an orchestra. You're the conductor, and your job is to get the pianist, the cellist, the saxophonist, the trumpeter, and the vocalist all to work and sing and play in concert. If the musicians do not play in harmony and concert, you have chaos. When you can get out of chaos into coherence and harmony, it's like, oh my God, this is stress less. This is effort less. This is in flow and harmony. And so there's an inner game to success and there's an outer game to success. When you combine the two, that is when you're able to really go from an idea to your 100,000, 500,000, a million, 5 million, 10 million, 50 million, 100 million, a billion, etc. And so if you're not in concert with the vision and the goals and everything else that's required in order to achieve those goals, then it's really hard and you struggle and you allow fear to control you versus you controlling it. Now, these are everything I've shared right now is all stuff that you can learn. There is nothing outside of you being able to learn. Functionally, every brain works the same. Every brain works the same, which just means I need to become a better operator of my own brain. And this is the proverbial reason why. Why is it that somebody could go to a world-class university, right, and not make a lot of money? Well, because knowledge and skill doesn't translate to behavioral change. All knowledge and skill does says, I have some knowledge and some skill. Behavior is a whole other element. And this is why, whenever anybody works with me and my company now, they have to commit to 100 days to change the neural patterns enough to create a new foundational behavioral change versus gaining more knowledge or skill. Reading a book gives you awareness. Going to an event for a weekend gives you awareness. It doesn't, unless you're there to change the skill and then back it up with another 30, 60, 90 days of application. You don't change the neural networks that change behavior long term. You can go on a diet for a day, a week, or a month, but 99% of people go on a diet, gain all the weight back. It's not because we don't know how to eat, what to eat, how much exercise to do, how much sleep to get. We know all that. That's not the problem. The problem is most people are not operating at the function of behavioral change at the level that they need to be at to consistently perform at that level. And we are creatures of habit, so we get stuck in our habitual patterns.
So beliefs themselves, how do you change beliefs? Like if you get set goals, like we've got a goal setting crew here that listens to Perpetual Traffic. I think we all do that. That's fine. We celebrate the goal achievement to a certain degree, but then it's on to the next thing. A phrase I always said is, happiness is being content where you're at, but always striving for more. But like, how do you change the belief? Like the belief part of things is if I am not a successful person, or like limiting beliefs that people have about themselves will not allow them to achieve those goals.
Correct.
How do they overcome those individual beliefs in order to be able to get to a place where they can set goals and visualize and meditate and do all the things that we had discussed in order to ultimately achieve them?
Yeah. So meditation is a practice in focus, concentration, and awareness, and letting go, and remembering that I am more than just my body and the 9 systems and the organs within my body. So let's go back to the same question I asked about fear. If you have a belief, is that belief the truth, or is that belief your truth? And the answer is like, well, I guess that's my truth, right? Sure. So where did you get that belief? Parents, you weren't born with any beliefs genetically. You may have been born with genetic predispositions, but those are activated or deactivated based on internal and external stimuli, based on epigenetics, but we won't go there. But let's go back to what is a belief in the brain. There's 2 types of beliefs. 99.9 people out of 100 can't tell me the 2 different types of beliefs, let alone how to change them. So there's a belief. A belief in the brain is nothing more than a reinforced neural pattern with associations. A reinforced neural pattern. So if your mother, sister, brother, father, teacher told you X and you observed X, you took that on to believe that's true. So let me give you an example that I think you'll both understand very, very quickly. Did you at one point believe in Santa Claus?
I still do.
Great. Did you at one point believe in the tooth fairy? Right? We've all heard Santa
Sure.
Claus, the tooth fairy. So
Absolutely.
somebody of importance in your life, um, shared that with you, that you built a neural network of this real thing called Santa Claus or the tooth fairy, that based on losing a tooth or at Christmas time, Santa and his elves and the reindeer are gonna come into your neighborhood and come down your chimney and put presence around. And you have this entire ideation and visualization and visceral feeling that Santa Claus was real until you learned that Santa Claus wasn't real. So, first and foremost, a belief is nothing more than a reinforced pattern. So the question then becomes, is it possible for me to create a belief that will empower me and reinforce that? And the answer is yes. So how would I do that? So let's say you wanted a belief that you don't currently have, and let's take one belief that you currently have that no longer serves you. So we can use one technique that I've used with my clients is a technique called in the past. It's called an in the past frame. So in the past, I used to believe that I wasn't good enough, smart enough, worthy enough, or in the past, I used to believe, fill in the belief that's disempower you. And now I'm choosing to believe and reinforce and put in what you want to believe. So part one is just write that out. Part two, how do I get that into the subconscious part of my brain, the implicit part of my brain? How do I take something that's explicit and declarative that I can declare, and how can I make that part of my implicit, non-declarative belief system? Part one is a conscious choice. Part two is where all the magic happens. The subconscious is the little hinge that swings the big door. So, can I take something that's a lie, like Santa Claus or the Tooth Fairy, and create enough references, an entire scenario around that being real, and then believing that until I don't anymore? Of course. So, why not be deliberate and say, in the past, I used to, and now I'm choosing to, and I'm reinforcing this? And what if every day, like I shared in the Hollywood actor or actress story, I read it, I listened to it, I visualized it, I was mindful around it, I started behaving in ways that are more aligned with the beliefs. When I change my identity to match the destiny that I want and the character traits and beliefs with that identity, now guess what happens? Behavior starts to change automatically. Now, here's what we know based on neuroscience research. It takes 66 days to 365 days to override an old pattern that we've had for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. So don't give me this weekend bullshit that I'm going to change it in a weekend. I can make some inroads in a weekend. I can use guided visualization. I could use mental contrasting. I can use self-hypnosis or guided hypnosis. I can use affirmation, declarations, promises, and other techniques. But you're not going to get rid of a limiting belief that you've had for 20 or 30 years, okay, in 15 minutes and get it to stick. You can go to a hypnotherapist who is skilled at her craft, and she can embed into the subconscious mind a new pattern that'll last for a bit of time. No problem there. But to reinforce it so that pattern becomes part of something known as the default mode network, my automatic self, I have to do the equivalent of what a software writer or coder has to do if there's software that's corrupt on a computer software program. I have to override the old code with the new code. So I'm going to use a variety of different evidence-based methodologies to actually change neurology. And once I do that enough, now there's a whole new me, a whole new way that I see the world because I've changed the software, the lens by which I see the world and the lens by which that causes my behavior. Does that make sense? I know this isn't a lot about perpetual traffic, but what I find, the reason I got so into what I do today, I was teaching people how to make more money, how to build your business. Here's the strategies, the tactics, the timelines, the tools, the resources, and they would be freaking stuck. And it wasn't until I helped them get the inner game right with the strategies, tactics, tools, resources, and combine the two. When I was 26, I bought the franchising rights to Remax of Indiana. And over the next 10 years, I opened up 85 offices and recruited over 1,200 agents that worked in my company. And in 1992, 5 years after I opened it, we got stuck at 1.2 billion a year in sales, which was a great place to be stuck. I go, why are we stuck? I've got the best freaking training on listings, the best training on sales skills. I know Jack Canfield and Brian Tracy and Dennis Waitley and Zig Ziglar. I've got the best freaking trainers in the world coming to teach my agents. And I realized, oh my God, they're not stuck because they don't know what to do. They're stuck because of all the other stuff that holds people back, their self-image, their limiting beliefs, their fears, their set points. And so I said, hey, I wonder if we started to recalibrate, rescript, reshape people's self-image and financial set points using what I started to use when I was 19, all right, 41 years ago. When I started to retrain my brain daily using these methodologies I've been sharing, my income skyrocketed, but I want to see what would happen with a group of my agents who at the time in 1992, the average real estate agent in Indiana was making $38,000 a year, including in my company. And so I took 75 agents over 6 months to help them with all the stuff we've been talking about, recalibrate their hidden self-image, their beliefs, etc. And those 75 agents increased sales in that 6 months over the same period the year before by over $100 million. And then over the next few years, from 1992 to 1997, I taught it to all of my agents. And we went from 1.2 billion to 4.5 billion a year. We didn't teach them any more closing techniques. We didn't teach them any more listing techniques. We didn't teach them any more, time management techniques. We didn't teach them any of that. We changed their identity to match the income and the level of success they want to achieve. Our average agent went from 38,000 to 120,000 average income in 5 years. So when we're talking about perpetual traffic, right? Yes, we need to know what to do, how to do it, why to do it. You need to know your metrics and how to generate leads and qualify and convert and nurture. I get all that stuff. But what you need to be focusing on even more is why aren't you doing just what you already know you should be doing? Forget about the new techniques and tips and tools and resources. Oh my God. Why aren't you doing the stuff you learned last week and the week before and the week before that and 3 months ago and 6 months ago that you said, oh my God, it was so amazing back then? Why aren't you doing that? Mm-hmm. And so the answer is because
shiny object syndrome.
Shiny object syndrome, because shining objects activate dopamine, right? And that's the reward neurochemical in the brain. And so we keep getting this reward neurochemical in the brain, and then serotonin gets involved, and we talk about it. We do this mental masturbation with each other. We high five each other and kumbaya each other, and we're bonding because we're learning and growing, but we're not changing our behaviors. And for behavioral change, there needs to be a much more methodical approach to changing from the inside out. And we have to sometimes slow down to pick up speed, right? We have to sometimes slow down to create a new behavioral process. That's why I don't mind talking about what to do, how to do it, when to do it. But if people don't get the fundamental mechanics of why they get stuck, okay, or why they sabotage or why they procrastinate, then we're not doing them a service of how do I level up my own abilities. We had there's two stories I always love to share around change. There's a gal that came to one of my events talking about this. Her name is Joni Sanders, and she's in a small little town just outside of Perth. She was in her 60s. Never made more than $12,000 a year as a social worker. I'm sorry, she never made more than $12,000 a year on a widow's salary after her husband passed away, raising 5 or 6 kids, and she was doing social work for free. And she'd been doing social work for free for like 30 years because she didn't feel like she was worth it. Within 12 months of getting what I just shared, She was making $75,000 to $100,000 a year, doing the same thing she was charging nothing for. Kat Brahma Books, 80-year-old wedding planner in Kauai, almost bankrupt. Husband's got cancer. She's almost bankrupt, doesn't know what they're going to do. She starts to reimagine herself at 80. Within 12 months of working the inner game stuff, she made $247,500 in her wedding planning business, took 50 grand, took her husband on a trip to Thailand, paid for it in cash, and unfortunately he died afterwards. But because she changed the calibration in here, instead of going bankrupt, she went on a trip of a lifetime. I can share the entrepreneur after entrepreneur after entrepreneur that I've worked with, that in addition to the techniques, I get that, the strategies, I get that. If you don't also work on what's driving perspective and behaviors, long term, not short term, we can all we can all visualize right now. We can all use an affirmation or a declaration or a promise right now. We can all take a technique we learned today because we read it in a book and apply it right now at an event that we went to. But ask yourself a question. The last event you went to, of all those notes that you took and the promises you made and the excitement you had, how many did you apply? Like how many? And for most people, it's maybe
3.
a handful if they're lucky. Yeah, awesome. You're rare at 3 because you're going back to, your patterns when we come home. So I know this is probably not where you guys want it to go on perpetual traffic, and it may be hopefully it's going to be a really good discussion for you guys to have in your community, because sometimes it's not learning what's the latest, the greatest, the best. Sometimes it's around taking what we already know and becoming more consistent with doing that.
Well, I think it has everything to do with perpetual traffic because people come on this show to grow their business. They think that traffic is the thing that they need. And that obviously, you go to the traffic store to buy your traffic, but it's so much more than that. And obviously, it's not just all about conversion. It's not about, some of the strategies that we talked about here from an advertising and a business perspective. It's exercising the muscle that's between your ears, most importantly. I think you've given our listeners a lot to think about here. If they hadn't taken a step back and say, all right, why is it that I'm stuck? It's not because I can't deploy the latest tactic or strategy. It's because I've got some self-limiting beliefs that don't allow me to get to that next level. And it's not really the thing that people talk about a whole lot, but you talk about it a whole lot. Where can people find you, the Perpetual Traffic listener, to learn more about what it is that you do and maybe get some even more in-depth training on some of the stuff that you and your team offers?
Awesome. Thanks, Ralph. Well, you and I talked, and Cassim and I talked earlier about the Brainathon that's coming up. And I'll give you guys a link. It's the theme this year is Change Your Brain, Change Your Income. And I'll be on with several world-renowned brain and success experts to help people really understand how to change their brain so they can change their income and break free from the plateaus that they're hitting, break free from limiting beliefs, break free from fears, break free from the stuff that holds us all back. And if anybody wants to join us, it's a free all-day event. They can come for an hour or 5 hours, and I'll get you the links. And people could follow me on social media, but they can also come to the Brainathon and have a real big exposure, not just to experts teaching the stuff that I've been talking about at deeper and different levels, but we also have a whole bunch of our entrepreneurial friends that were on last year's Brainathon that are showing how they applied the Brainathon to become millionaires in a year, to start businesses that do millions in revenue, to overcome challenges that they had, whether it's in their personal lives or their business lives, to break free and really achieve the proverbial financial freedom in their own lives.
And they can find that over at myneurogym.com, if I'm not mistaken, or they can just Google it.
Or they can go to Brainathon.
Or Brainathon.
Brainathon.com, okay. Either one. Myneurogym.com is our company, and Brainathon.com will take them there too.
Great. Well, we're going to leave all the links in the show notes here. And thank you for coming on Perpetual Traffic, John, bringing it from a mental perspective. This is a good reset episode for everyone who's been caught really in the weeds, especially with a lot of there's a lot of negativity around just digital marketing and just marketing online in general. And I think this is a great reset for our listeners here to sort of get out of their own way. And oftentimes is the case, and take some time, to reinvest in their own understanding of maybe the limiting beliefs that they have and create some new ones. And you can certainly do that over at brainathon.com, and certainly follow John on all his socials. We'll leave that link in the show notes. Really thank you all for listening for this week. Just a reminder to subscribe and leave a honest rating over on iTunes for Perpetual Traffic. Our producer always asks us to do that every single week. You can leave an honest review or a dishonest review as long as it's positive. No, just kidding. Only honest reviews here. John Assaraf, thanks for bringing it today on Perpetual Traffic. For my co-host, Qasim Aslam. Until next week, everybody. See ya.
Thanks, y'all.